Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vinyl Brotherhood, where we like to kick back, take it easy, and just chat about music, whether it be the latest and greatest new releases or old favorites from years gone by. It's that time again for yet another classic album review, and today we're going to review a legendary album by a most legendary band, and that is New Order's first album, Movement. It's going to be a great one, so get comfortable and we'll get started here momentarily. Vinyl ladies and vinyl gentlemen, I'm thrilled to be back with you this evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today's selection is the debut-ish record by the seminal English electronic / post-punk band New Order. And I say it's only kind of sort of their debut because, as most of you know, New Order was formed from the ashes of Joy Division shortly after the unfortunate loss of vocalist Ian Curtis. We have a review of Joy Division's near flawless sophomore effort, Closer, right here on the channel, and in response to a request we have received from one of our dear viewers, our audience has impeccable taste, imagine that. We bring you this deep dive into an essential record from the early 1980s. Don't have to tell me twice, I've been waiting, my friends, to review New Order, and it looks like the time has finally come. So let's quit goofing around here and get right to it, shall we? So let's talk about Movement. Here's the album cover, designed by the one and only Peter Saville, a gentleman I learned about in graphic design school. And believe it or not, this is not just my favorite New Order album cover, but one of my favorite album covers of all time. Yeah, it was the 50th Factory Records, its 50th in their catalog, so nice little Easter egg. You see the F there for Factory Records. And you have the Roman numeral L, which is 50. So yeah, a lot of big names on the back as well. I love it. I used to have the artwork on a t-shirt, which I wish I could say it shrunk, but I actually just got a little heavier. Had it back in college, and I may have to replace it at some point, but yeah, let's get started. Movement features the classic New Order lineup, which includes Barney Sumner on guitar and vocals, Peter Hook on bass and vocals, Gillian Gilbert stepping in to do synths and programming, and Stephen Morris on the drums and synths. Already this album is starting to sound recognizably New Order, what with Stephen crushing it yet again with his hyper-mechanical drum patterns, and Peter Hook going the extra mile on the bass, often utilizing it as if it were another electric guitar handling lead melodies. Along with those trademark touches, we are getting an extra dose of synthesizers and dance beats, a couple of things that the band is warming up to at the start of the decade as Joy Division. A lot of those electronic touches come by way of Gillian Gilbert, bringing the group back to a four-piece. And guitarist Bernard handles the lead vocals for the most part. He's never been the most traditionally refined of singers in rock music history, but I would say he hasn't quite come into his own just yet, and the production style isn't necessarily doing him a ton of favors, but he's got his moments. So rather than touch on the opening tracks, I thought it'd be most helpful to chat about the second song of the album, the song entitled Truth. This song just seems to best exemplify what this album represents, a true metamorphosis for everyone involved. The electronic side is already being introduced. I just find it interesting how it's juxtaposed to their, at the time, very nocturnal post-punk sound. The guitars are so primitive and raw, and Barney's vocals just reverberating way too far back in the mix. So we've got the droning punk guitars of the Joy Division days contrasted against a lush and unwavering electronic beat resembling the chirping of crickets or something like that. In a way, it sounds like the true successor to whatever the band was doing with the Closer album, especially since it does feature a bleaker atmosphere than the typical New Order hit single. Now, this album isn't Technique or Brotherhood. You probably won't be dancing the night away to this one, but the way the broader palette is utilized on Movement feels a little different, as they're not yet fully committed or comfortable with the dance synth pop sound. It actually comes across as somewhat avant-garde and perhaps not as commercial as some of their more well-known material. And the fun continues with songs like Senses and my personal favorite, Chosen Time. It's nice to be presented with a variety that we get on this record. I guess that's the benefit of only including 8 songs, but each tune has its own special identity, while the album sounds pretty cohesive for the most part. Senses is an absolute feast for the ears. You'll want to be sure you've got your best headphones on hand. Listen to how the percussion builds and pans all over the place from left to right, keeping you guessing as you approach your destination with a sense of foreboding. It sounds both exotic and intense thanks to the masterful rhythm section, not just here, but also on Denial, the haunting, simmering closing track as well. The band, they show calculated restraint, saving the big moments for other parts of the album, but not without leaving you a tad shaken up. Chosen Time is arguably the danciest and maybe the most instantly catchy cut on the record, and probably the biggest look into the future of this particular band, while still operating under that very grayscale mood. But don't get too ahead of yourself, because Chosen Time is followed by a stretch of fantastic post-punk gems to make the OG fans feel right at home. The effects and synths take more of a supporting role on these songs, while the guitars take the lead, recalling the sounds of the group that they left behind. And it's fitting for the track ICB, a somber little tune that pays tribute to Ian Curtis, and very much structured like some of Joy Division's best work. The hymn also does this quite well, with an epic climax that will make your arm hair stand up. It may be the strongest of the more post-punk styled songs, with heights that stand proudly alongside those of 24 Hours. The heavy and gloomy atmosphere presented here pairs wonderfully with the lyrics, portraying someone weighed down by the guilt of sins past. The hymn is followed by Doubts Even Here, giving us the perfect 1-2 punch, not unlike the one we got on the previous Joy Division album with The Eternal and Decades, where you have 2 practically flawless songs that are also somehow perfectly interchangeable as far as their role in the album's pacing goes. Doubts Even Here boasts some of the album's most sad and yet beautiful melodies via the lead guitar penetrating the feels as they are wont to do. To set it apart from the usual fare, Jillian Gilbert steps in to do a little bit of spoken word to pair alongside the droning vocal lead by none other than Peter Hook himself. If Hook ultimately wasn't the right choice for a New Order lead singer, I'm willing to say he was the right choice for singer on Doubts Even Here, and I'm much happier with his performance on this song than I am with his lead vocal work on the opening number titled Dreams Never End, which we've come to at last. So I've always said that New Order excels at 2 specific but different kinds of songs. I'm mostly referring to the stuff that they put forth as singles. The first kind is your 6-minute disco-ready banger, and the second is a jangly, highly melodic alternative pop rock tune. Dreams Never End would fall into the latter, picking up where the non-album single Ceremony left off. Dreams Never End feels like the progenitor for many a classic New Order track, although I would argue that the 1983 single Temptation would be the first to really perfect the formula, while also somehow melding the 2 bold new directions that the band was taking, as if to become the first quintessential, undeniable New Order song. Definitely does a better job, in my opinion, than the prior single, Everything's Gone Green, aka the proto Blue Monday. So believe it or not, back in 1981, Movement didn't receive the warmest reception, although people seem to like it quite a bit nowadays. One could see the band is going through an identity crisis at this point in time, and they probably wouldn't be wrong. New Order don't sound nearly as refined or confident here as they would on the very next record, or even on the Temptation single, but it's impossible to see these experiments as anything but extremely fascinating. Considering the loss of Ian Curtis, the external expectations, their frustrations with longtime producer Martin Hannett, all those things find their way onto Movement one way or another, making this album like a time capsule of sorts. And as much as I tried to avoid doing so in this review, it's so hard to separate this album from the events that brought it about, but maybe it's time to embrace that as part of the experience, forever adding to Movement's great mystique. In truth, while I wouldn't put it up there with anything New Order accomplished in the decades to follow, it's something that I would prefer over much of the output of their contemporaries. Movement is a highly exploratory, necessary, and ultimately quite original album that has rightfully found its place in alternative rock music history. Let's head on back. I've already said so multiple times, but this album is very much a transitional work for New Order. We'll never have to guess what New Order and Joy Division, what a mashup would sound like. And I know it's hard to reconcile Bizarre Love Triangle with something like Shadow Play, but ultimately, this is the same band, and Movement is the proper continuation of where Joy Division was heading, in my opinion. That being said, in the context of New Order's body of work, that almost makes Movement something of an anomaly. So I have a different relationship with it than I do many of their other entries. When I really want to scratch that New Order itch, chances are I'll probably hit up Technique, Low Life, or Power, Corruption, and Lies. But in isolation, Movement is a strong and historically significant work of art. It's awesome to see where they came from, and the songs definitely hold their own. I think I'm ready to score Movement an 8 out of 10 today. And if you're a fan of the genre, I can't imagine you haven't already checked it out, but really everyone should give Movement a shot. There's a lot to appreciate here, so that's what I think about it. But now I'd like to know how you all feel about this one. Agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments what you think of Movement or any New Order album for that matter. And on your way down through the comments, be sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. It may not seem like much, but it's a big help. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. You all have been the best. Keep checking back for new videos. We've got some really cool stuff planned here in the near future. But that's all we've got for you today, so please have an amazing week, and we'll see you again very soon right here at the Vinyl Brotherhood.